Alrighty, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to cover something that, well, talk about something that I technically covered, but either I didn't say this particular part or I didn't cover it well enough. Either way, it is very, very important to a video that when I was talking about anime gatekeepers or dubbing studio gatekeepers or gatekeepers in general. There's a very important reason for these kinds of individuals, these kinds of people, or this idea of gatekeepers preventing people from getting into anime and dubbing. And the reason I want to make sure that I do a video on it, because it is really, really important. I did kind of focus more on the money side or the fact that there just weren't enough roles. But there really is probably a larger reason why it is such a gated community, why it is so tight-lipped, why it is so friends-only, why it is so stay out, there's no room for you kind of thing. Anime and dubbing is very different than doing cartoon or video game, in the sense that when you're doing a cartoon or video game, a lot of times the voiceover is part of the development process. The product isn't finished, and they want to put in voiceover so that they can finish it. It's very, very necessary. However, in anime, everything else is already technically done. The music, the scoring, the graphics, the effects, a lot of the marketing. The only difference is they want to put voiceover from a specific language over the voices of the original language, Japanese normally. That's really the only difference, is that they want to localize this and tailor this towards a more specific language audience. That's really the only thing that they got to do. Sometimes there is some slight music changes, or there's some censoring depending on the demographic, but normally it's just taking out the original vocals and putting in new vocals to match the lip flaps. So doing this is supposed to be done within a very, very short period of time, especially now that simuldubs are such a big deal. People are basically, because of the digital age, because of how connected we are with other countries, some studios are basically being dubbed, especially if they're almost as popular in one language as they are in the other, are being dubbed almost exactly at the same time as the original language. What that means is, like for Dragon Ball Super, that's a simuldub, almost at the same time that the studio in Japan is finishing up theirs, the American dub is being done. And there's a quick turnaround because they want basically these episodes in the Japanese and the American English to be released at the same time for the most part. And that means that they got to get the dub done quickly. So because of this, it's very hard to have open casting calls, because there would only be a couple ways that you could do that. Number one, you would have to post a casting call long in advance before you even knew what it is that you were dubbing. Because you wouldn't find out that you needed to dub something, or what the episode or what the script was going to be, or who the characters were, until basically the deadline is quickly approaching. So they would only be able to hold auditions or casting calls for people that they feel fill a niche or an area. So what they want to have is a very large roster of people that can cover a lot of variety of characters, voices, personalities, races, genders, all this kind of stuff. So that when they get a project, they're not having to hold casting calls. They're just filling roles based on the people that they already have, because the deadline is so quick. The other option that they would have, if they were to have casting calls for every anime that comes in, would be very, very short opportunities, very, very short windows of casting calls, basically a day or two. And they would just quickly run through those auditions based on that. But that's not enough time to find the right people, often. That's not enough time. As someone who's hosted auditions many, many times, basically a month is about the average. I've seen some people post casting calls for like 2 months. I think that's excessive. I think 2 weeks to a month, between that is the sweet spot, the Goldilocks zone of there's a really, really good chance that the right person or the right people are going to see the audition. Mostly just because of time zones and people's personal lives. Not everyone who does voiceover full time like I do. A lot of people do voiceover casually, or they're actors and voice actors, or they have a day job and they do voice acting. The point is that they don't always have the free time to check all the auditions. So they may not get to it until quite a ways down the line. And the right person may be one of those. In fact, quite often that's the case for me that I've seen, is that a lot of people that are the right person for the job are going to be someone who also does something else. Rarely are they going to be someone who does voiceover and that's it. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. Maybe I should look into it. But the people that I've often hired are people like, they have a very tight schedule and they only have small windows of opportunity to do voiceover. So that being said, they can't really host auditions all the time. So what they do is they actually have an opportunity for people to send in demos or send in demo reels or send in audio files or resumes, what have you, and they can, if they like it, if this person fills their niche, then they can put them in a short list of people to contact immediately when a role or an audition becomes available. And then they host auditions within that small pool. And because of this, and also because of the turnaround, they like to have people on their roster, people in their contacts list that they can trust, that they know are going to be available, that they know have good audio if they're having to connect digitally or remotely. So that's why there's a friends clique. There's a small group. There's not a lot of seats at the table. Because of that, they can't host open auditions all the time. I have occasionally heard that they have, especially, okay, so every now and then, My Hero Academia, there we go. Two of the main characters for that show, they actually hosted auditions. And the two main characters, I don't remember who they were, Bakuya, maybe, that they got on their cast had never worked with them before and hadn't really done anime. So it does happen occasionally, but they knew that they were going to be doing this show a good deal in advance, and so they had time to prepare. They had time to look for something. Also, they didn't do that for the entire show. It was just very specific characters. If they did it for the entire show, it never would have happened. They would not have had enough time to host auditions for every single role. But they wanted to find some specific voices and some specific personalities that they didn't already have in their lineup, or they wanted a little bit more variety. They probably had some people on their roster that they could have had fill those roles, but they still wanted to look for a little bit more some fresh faces, some fresh voices, some young blood to add to the list, just to spice it up a little bit. So it's not the same old all the time. But normally, that's not how that works. It's normally not how it goes. And I just wanted to put that out there because I wanted to make sure that, I know in the previous video, it did kind of seem like it was just because of money or it was just because of nepotism, even though that might be the case sometimes. I know there's a couple studios out there that there's like 5 family and friends that do all of it, and they're very rude towards new people. Not going to name any names, not going to say who this is, or even the studio. I don't want to narrow it down. So that kind of stuff does happen, but it's not the norm. It's not the majority of it. It is a business. It is not a very lucrative business, but it is a business, and so there is a business aspect to it. So you got to kind of look into stuff like this. Now, the reason that I wanted to add to the gatekeepers conversation is I don't want people to get discouraged or hold grudges. Because I used to hold a lot of grudges myself. I would send in auditions, I would send in demos, I would try to contact people, and I would get nothing back. Sometimes I would get rude messages back saying, how dare you contact us, basically. And there was a period when I would make a list of people that I would, if I was to ever get my own studio, or if I was to ever get famous or whatever, that I would make a list of people that I would do the same thing to. That is a terrible, terrible way of looking at life, looking at business, looking at voiceover. It's a terrible way of going about things. The reason I say that is because when we don't know why someone does something, or when we don't know what could be the reason, we often associate malice or jealousy or just ill intent in general on the other party because we don't know why. So it's good to have that kind of information. I mean, bigotry on any level is just bad. It's unhealthy. It's unacceptable. And, bigotry can even be small things like this. When you send in an audio sample, or you send in a demo, or you try to contact someone and they don't contact you back, our brain, for some reason, because we're stupid monkeys, automatically goes to they're jealous, they're bad, they're terrible people, they're hateful, they're greedy, they're whatever. And that's not going to be the case most of the time. In fact, it's quite possible they didn't see your email. They didn't get to your file. It's quite possible that they just didn't have the time to fully review it. It's quite possible, in fact, very likely, that they would have liked it if they had actually gotten to it. Or it was good, but it wasn't what they were looking for. Like, it was good, but there was there was already someone on their lineup or someone already on their list or roster or whatever who could basically do the same thing that you could. And if they already have that person on their list, they're not going to have 2 that basically do the same thing. Maybe later down the line, when they have more animes and more shows they're doing that have more seasons and they need to kind of split up some work, maybe they'll do that. Maybe they'll add you in. But until then, they just couldn't fit you in. And they're not going to respond to everyone's emails. They're not going to respond to everyone's submissions. They're not going to respond to everyone's auditions, not because they wish you ill, not because they don't want you to see you succeed. It's just that you are one of thousands and thousands of people. They can't respond to every email. They can't respond to every person. They can't tell you what it is that you didn't miss or didn't get. They just can't do that. So rest assured, it's not as bad as I think the previous video made it sound, even though I don't really take back anything I said in the previous video, but I do think adding extra information gives a fuller picture and does kind of help. So there you go. That's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Totally fine. Subscribe if you're new, bell for notifications, and leave down in the comment section below. Like to see me cover any other topics. Yeah, it's going to be it. And until next time, peace.